it's really a challenging thing to give to your family during the season. And then when you go on the road, you're on the road, so you're completely gone, and you may have some phone calls. So I agree with that statement. It's really tough on the families. It's tough on the wives, and it's amazing that you can stay married being a ball player. Greg, let's drive back to Truist Park. Were you a Christian when you were a ball player the whole time? I was. I became a Christian when I was a junior in high school. Interesting thing happened in my family when I was in middle school. My parents got divorced, and none of us were believers. And through that divorce,
left?
Yeah, left. Okay. Through that divorce, my dad became a Christian, and my mother through different people, and ultimately my mom believed that God hate, as the Bible says, take a left here, God hates divorce, that he was calling her back to the marriage. And so after about 3 years of divorce, they got remarried to each other.
Wow.
Which is pretty amazing. My brother was off in college. My sister was out on her own working, and I was the only one left at home. And I thought to myself, man, this is crazy. I knew people were getting divorced, but I never heard of them getting back together again. And I think I knew right at that point, that was probably the first time God started drawing me into himself. I knew that at some point, I said, man, if God could pull something like that off, then I probably need to do some investigation. And I think probably I knew that sometime in the future that I would be a follower of God, and I just knew at that time I wasn't ready. And so as I started to see their lives change, and I saw them on a daily basis and how they were totally different people, I started to get convicted, and they did everything. I knew that they were praying for me. They were trying to get me to read the scriptures with them, and they would do all kinds of tactics like, hey, I'm going through this class, can you listen to what I'm learning and tell me what you think? And of course I wanted nothing to do with it. I think I'd shared earlier that I was going through that period of my life where the doctor told me I'd never play sports again. I really started to search for significance, and I did that through the party scene, through girls, and I was smoking pot and drinking, and at a very young age, and hanging out with seniors, and I was a freshman in high school. I really just didn't know who I was, and I was really searching for who Greg was, and wasn't doing a very good job of finding that out. And so as they started to share with me, it was very, very uncomfortable, and I didn't want to have anything to do with it. Even though I'd seen what God was doing in their lives, I just kind of felt like, I guess a lot of people, that if I dedicated myself to God, it was going to take away the fun that I thought, the only fun that I was having at the time, because I was really miserable, but the only fun was really going out and not thinking about how miserable I am. So I kept fighting them off, and then I remember specifically one night I came home, and they asked me to sit down and listen to their the 4 spiritual laws. They were learning, I guess it was back in the day, there was a thing called Evangelism Explosion.
Yeah.
And they were taught through
James Kennedy.
Yeah, Crusade. They were using the Spirit-filled life, the 4 spiritual laws that was put out through Crusade. So I sat down, and I listened to them share with me the 4 basic principles, and that God loves you. He has a wonderful plan for your life, but you can't experience it because of sin. You're separated from God, that you need to bring in your sin, commit to Him, and commit your life to Him, and He'll give you all that you've been searching for. And so as I heard those words, all that kind of stuff that I had been experiencing just really welled up. It was very emotional for me, but I just knew that was the right thing to do. And so I sat down, I prayed the prayer, and turned my life over to the Lord and just said, if you can make something of this life that, to me, I didn't see any value that I brought to the table, because everything I held as valuable was in athletics, and because that wasn't a part of my life, I just didn't know how good my life could be, or what good it could be for anybody. So, but I just trusted that God had a plan for me. And it's like that next day, man, I woke up with different eyes. God radically changed my perspective. He took that moodiness and that bitterness that I had, and really started to show me that He had purpose, that I was designed for purpose. And it was a radical transformation, because I remember going to the school the next day and sharing with my best friend what had happened, and he looked at me like I was crazy. Because I was the ringleader, wildest guy at the party, and just didn't want to have anything to do with spiritual things. But yeah, so my parents played a huge role in that, because they really set the example. I mean, God worked through their lives in their obedience, but then also just in their lives that had changed.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. That's really cool. So you were, how old were you at that point?
So I was a junior in high school, so
Okay.
I was 16, and what's interesting at the time, I think I shared this earlier, that I wanted to go out and start playing baseball. I wanted to do something, and even though it was painful and the doctors were telling me no, I just said I got to go do something. So that all kind of coincided, where I was trying to dabble back into sports, and that was through pitching. And then this thing happened in my family, and then I came to know Christ, and so I ultimately, then I was dedicating my life and just say, Lord, if you want me to play, I'm going to play the best of my ability. And I started pitching, but I started pitching with purpose.
So, okay, you get into the minors, you climb up to the majors. Man, you guys have to be faced with all sorts of temptations as ball players. What goes on? What kind of temptations does a follower of Jesus face in the major leagues?
I don't think it's any different than what most people face, except for the fact that you got very young men with a lot of money and sometimes a lot of time on their hands, especially on the road. One of the things that I told myself early on, and I kind of promised to my wife, that I wouldn't put myself in tough situations where it was easy to feel like that, well, nobody will ever know, because I'm in San Francisco, I'm in LA, I'm in New York. So what I tried to do is, every time I went to a new city, I tried to connect with the chaplain from the team of that city.
Okay.
So I'd go have lunch with them. And then I also made it a point that I didn't drink at that point in my life, because I knew that just brought on a number of issues for me. So if the guys wanted to go out and they wanted to go to the bar, I'd say, well, hey, why don't we just go to dinner? You can have a drink there, and then that way we can go out. But I never would go out to the bars with them, because I just felt like that there was nothing that was going to be positive from that. There were always women hanging out at those places. They knew the ball teams that were in.
Am I going there?
Yes.
Okay.
And so I wouldn't go out to the bars. I'd go out to dinner, and it can be very lonely. But that way I tried to seek out fellowship. So I rallied around, tried to rally the other believers on the team, and we'd get together and we'd study the Word, have a Bible study. We did have a chapel program, so I'd try to reach out to the chaplains, like I said. And that just really kind of set a tone for me, and I did that my whole career. And I never was faced with a whole lot of temptation from that standpoint. And I think it's because I put those safeguards in, not only in the big leagues, but I was doing that in the minor leagues as well. Because the minor leagues, even though you don't have the money, you can always get into trouble, and you're always traveling, you're on the road. So there were guys that were doing the same things in the minor leagues, because guys that were married, they'd cheat on their wives, or they would find places to do that, and I just knew that I did not want that to be a temptation, and so I tried to safeguard myself from that.
remember when I lived in Baltimore years ago, someone told me that Cal Ripken's wife had said that she became a baseball widow during the season.
Mm-hmm.
So what's it like for families and for you, being away from home so much?
Yeah, very difficult. And even when you are home, you're away. So think about this: the game is at 7 o'clock. It doesn't get over till 10 or 11 sometimes. By the time you do all the things you need to do to prep your body or to take care of your body after the game, you may not leave the clubhouse till 12 o'clock. And then by the time you get home, it's almost 1 o'clock, because, you know, in Atlanta here, we would drive 45 minutes to get home. And then if there's traffic from the fans, it could be longer. So that's after the game. So you're not getting home till 1. Then you wind down. You may not get to bed till 2 because you're all jacked up with adrenaline. And then the next day you wake up, you can't get up at 8 o'clock when the kids get up or earlier. You'd want to sleep till like 10, and then you'd have from 10 to 2, and then you'd have to go to the ballpark again. So even when you're at home, you're really not home, because you're preoccupied with your body, you're preoccupied with the competition, with your stats. It's really a challenging thing to give to your family during the season. And then when you go on the road, you're on the road, so you're completely gone, and you may have some phone calls. So I agree with that statement. It's really tough on the families. It's tough on the wives, and it's amazing that you can stay married being a ball player, because it's not conducive for them to come on the road with you. It's just really hard living in a hotel room with kids, and you know, then they get into school, and we homeschooled a little bit at the beginning, but we found ways to make it work. But really, you needed the off season to kind of reconnect. But then it was only 2 or 3 months, and then you're back at it again.
You're a strong believer. Tell us about what's your walk with God like? What kind of stuff do you do on a daily basis? Do you pray every day? Do you read scripture every day or almost every day? You know, what's your life as a Christian like?
Well, I do read. Right now I'm doing a devotional, and then it's helping me read through the Bible in a year. So that's something that I'm doing currently that I'm really enjoying, and I think that's really important, to stay in the scriptures. And from that, obviously, there's prayer that goes in on a daily basis. And you know, prayer is really challenging to me. That's not something I feel like that I'm a real prayer warrior. I wish I was. I've been around people who are, and they are flat out amazing, and I don't understand it. I don't know if that's my giftedness, or I heard my pastor say one time that prayer is like a muscle, that if you don't exercise it, it doesn't get any stronger. So I would say that I'm very weak. My muscles are very weak in that category. Accountability, I think, is really important. I'm in a group that...
Hold on, just about prayer. So here's something that may encourage you. So I struggle with prayer too. Right now I probably pray between 20 and 30 minutes a day. Before I was married, I'd pray for 2 hours a day, and it was just easy to do. But you know, you get family, and then after all these years, I just feel like I'm saying the same stuff over and over, and it just gets so boring. But a few years ago, I had an opportunity. J.I. Packer and I spoke at the same conference, and we became friends. And I'm riding in the car with him, with my friend Paul Copan. At one point, we had coffee with Packer, and then we're driving him home. And I said, he asked me to call him Jim. Okay, Jim, Jimmy. You know, it's like, here I am with J.I. Packer, this giant. And I said, you know, you wrote the book Knowing God. It was the first theology book I ever read. And, you know, so here's the thing. I said, for the last several years, at least 5 years, I've had real labor in prayer. I don't enjoy it. I keep doing it, but I don't enjoy it. Do you ever have times like that? He says, well, of course I do. I said, well, what do you do? And I'm thinking, all right, here it is. The guy that wrote Knowing God, J.I. Packer, is going to share with me what he does when he has trouble with prayer. And here's what he said. I keep praying. So, come on. He says, yep, I just keep praying. Most of the time in prayer, it's going to be like that. And on the one hand, it's like I was like discouraged because now I knew that things weren't necessarily going to be improving. They would at times, but you know, of course, there's times of sweet intimacy with God where you feel that, but those times are few and far in between. But the good thing was what I was experiencing was normal. Even very spiritually mature people who had walked with the Lord for, 80 years or so were experiencing the same thing. So I don't know if that makes you feel better, but
Yeah, no, that's cool.
So you're saying about accountability.
Yeah, so I think a big part of your walk with God too is accountability. Who's walking with you? And I know that with what we do, we've got a sweet group of guys that are doing that now. And I found that the times where I'm not in a group with other men that are struggling and you're sharing your life with,
Am I going east or west?
You're going to keep going straight.
Okay.
That when you don't have a group of people praying for you and walking with you and you're sharing your life with them, that things can get pretty lonely, pretty tough. And I think that's real important. So scriptures, prayer, and accountability, and then having just a good church where you're involved in corporate worship. I think that's kind of the fourth leg of just a good solid foundation that you have to have.
That's cool. You run a podcast now. What's it called? How do people access it?
Yeah, go to Behind the Braves. You can sign up on Spotify, Apple Music, or go to Braves.com, and you can check it out. We've had over. We're going to get off on Windy Hill here. We've had over 500,000 downloads. We got over 80 episodes. Guys from Hank Aaron to we should have Chipper Jones on this week. Straight.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say we've got a bunch of alumni. We got current players, current staff. We really try to take a well-rounded look at the Braves organization and try to share things with you that you may not know, and listen to Alex Anthopoulos, to the players, to the scouts, and then former players who've been through the organization.
Wow. Well, that's pretty cool. Greg, this has been a blast just spending some time with you, brother. It really has.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun. I appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, thanks. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed that, and we'll have more of these coming to you in the future. So thanks for joining us for this, and God bless you all. If you enjoy these videos, consider supporting us. You can give a gift of any amount, either one time or on a monthly basis, and all gifts are tax deductible as allowed by law. Just go to our secured website, risenjesus.com/donate. Thank you.